This episode is brought to you by Vintage Media Grading at vmgvinyl.com. Explore how professional grading can protect your records at vmgvinyl.com. And now, on with the show.
Oh, well, hey everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 409 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And this week, we have on the show Chris Banta of Romanus Records, talking about his vinyl innovations. Now, Chris is owner and chief Jawa of Romanus Records and has been doing some incredible work in recent years, pushing the possibilities of the vinyl record format, hand-making records filled with items and objects, liquid-filled records, sand-filled records, multiple colors and chambers of sand and liquid, razor blades, gunpowder, mazes with ball bearings, records with LED lights in them, a working guitar effect pedal made within a vinyl record with knobs and everything. Romanus Records is always developing, innovating, experimenting, and looking to develop a new and cool approach for vinyl enthusiasts. And Chris shares plenty of that today. Plus, a video on Romanus Records, My Weird Life, just won an Emmy. That video is on YouTube, and I'll link to it in this episode page. Well worth checking out and seeing how Chris approaches the creative process and makes some amazing products. And also, please note we have an extended version of this interview only available to show patrons at patreon.com/vinylguide. We always provide extras to our show supporters. Those lovely, good-looking people who support our podcast through Patreon. All episodes up there are commercial-free, high resolution, so they sound better, and quite often we provide more of the interviews with the artists, and this week is no exception. So if you're not already a patron, join us at patreon.com/vinylguide, help support the show, and enjoy all the extras. And with that, let's get into our conversation with Chris Banta of Romanus Records. All right, this week on the Vinyl Guide, we've got Chris Banta from Romanus Records. And Chris, I got to say, Romanus Records, some of the most gorgeous records I have in my collection are from your label. I guess label is a fair characterization.
Yeah. I'm living in this weird in-between world here at the Romanus verse. Of I have my label, Romanus Records, which is, I focus pretty heavily just on independent bands. And then I have my manufacturing side, Romanus Custom Vinyl Manufacturing, where I make a lot of this weird stuff it's becoming a lot more bigger corporate acts and stuff like that. But I'll make, things for the tiniest of the tiny as long as I got time. So, yeah.
Okay. Which birthed which?
Yeah. So, the label first, and what birthed the label was my band, Brother Oh Brother. We had been on 6 different indie labels, and out of that, you just start to get some knowledge, and I just wanted to have the coolest vinyl I could. So I just started experimenting 8 years ago on a lot of these crazy filled ideas, and from that, we made something that I needed people to know that I made it, not the label that we were on. So I launched, big quotes, Romanus Records, just so people would know I made these things. And they sold out. It's 60 glow-in-the-dark Dino Bone filled records, which seems really silly now, but it was 2015 or something. And they sold out. We were on tour. They sold out in 2 minutes. And it was 60 of them for $60. But at the time, I was that melted my brain. So we added, it just made sense then to all right, I guess we should just start this label thing. And then slowly but surely added bands that mostly a lot of time we were meeting on the road that I was man, this band rules. I just need somebody to give a rip about them. And then for 5 to 6 years, some foggy number in there, I kept all of this stuff, everything I was doing, especially the handmade stuff, proprietary to the label. But I always knew the move was to open a manufacturing side that other bands and labels could order from this stuff. And I just wanted to make sure it was tested and strong and good. And so that birthed the manufacturing side. And that was about 3 years ago. And unknowingly, once I launched that, I went full time with vinyl as my job. And I'm just riding the wave. I don't know what to tell you. I'm just riding the wave.
The stuff you're doing is great. It blows my mind. And folks, if you don't know what we're talking about here, check out Romanus Records, romanusrecords.com, but on Instagram, I think it's Romanus Records. You've got pictures of just these amazing records, not only just the splatter and the different designs of vinyl, but stuff that's stuffed in, filled, liquid filled, sand filled. Just a few things that have been in the middle of Romanus Records. Slices of shotgun shells.
Yeah, we did a bullet filled lathe cut for Joshua Powell. He's on the label he had a single called Bliss as a flak jacket. And I had this bullet idea for quite a while. And lots of times I'll have ideas that will sit and be in my brain and just kind of waiting on the right thing to come around to use it for. So yeah, we did that. So much stuff like it. And the manufacturing side is basically, that's all I'm doing. It's just weird filled insertion stuff and design and helping bring concepts to life. And
glitter filled. There's
glitter.
Blood. There's one. Was it real blood inside that one?
No, I've done tons of blood filled at this point, but I have a really good blood mix for whatever that means. I did a record filled with scorpions, like real scorpions last year. That was so gross. Like they were ethically sourced from everything I understand. So I didn't track these down. I didn't go on some weird scorpion hunt or anything. So don't
email.
Yeah, I'm not that guy. Okay. I guess they were in like some guy's taxidermy shop for like 30 years because they were all in formaldehyde and it was gross. That was like one of the times like ever as like I was like, you know what, I'm going to exercise some boss. Like I guess the boss here kind of and made my employees place most of the bugs down. And I would be like, all right, let's do that. And then I do my stuff at the end to make sure they stayed there. But man, they reeked. There's like 150 or so of these big chonky bugs in my house for a while. So yeah, it was a trip, man.
Shredded money, Monopoly money, razor blades.
Yeah, we did razor blades and gunpowder real early on. That was early. That was actually from the Ghost Wolves in Texas. That was on my label. That was the first my band wasn't tied to something. You know, it's a classic story for a lot of labels where like your own band is maybe doing well enough, you do an in-house thing and then you just see where it goes. But and I made, I guess from a technical standpoint, maybe we'll talk about this later, I guess, like I made, it would have been September of last year with ADD pedals, these guitar pedal records that it's a playable record, but it's a working guitar pedal and you can plug an input jack and there's actually, the set comes with two pedals. It's one's a overdrive and one's a delay. I mean, you could run a whole signal chain essentially if we built enough.
Through the record. So the record's got an input and an output and the circuitry is inside the
power.
record.
And on the center label is where all of the tone knob controls are and everything and your push button. And it's pretty sweet deal. As of, I don't know, like 48 hours ago, I think we won the Making Vinyl conference. They said it couldn't be done category for that record, which was pretty tight.
Congrats.
Especially one of the things that was in there, like, was a Paul McCartney record. So in my brain, I'm like, I can say I beat Paul McCartney in something, for the rest of my life. No hard feelings, Paul.
He's got enough. He'll get over it.
Yeah, I'm sure he's super aware that I exist. So if you're listening, Paul, I'd love to work with you. But yeah, I've just been too dumb to not stop experimenting and had lots of good friends and good help and good inspiration along the way.
So your background, like, what is your skill set in terms? Are you an engineer of some sort? Like, what's your background that's led you to this path?
Trash engineer is like like in Star Wars, like they've got the Jawas, and they're out there on the sand cruiser and they're just like grabbing stuff and just turning junk into treasure or what. Like that's more where I'm probably coming from. My background. I have my college social studies secondary ed degree, so like a high school teacher. I did nonprofit work, and so me doing anything with music at all, especially till middle school me, I thought people who played music were dorks. I was like, yo, we got sports. Why would we ever need music? Like I just, real meathead mindset. So the fact that I'm doing any of this is beyond me to comprehend. But if I had to say something that ties into any of this, would be my dad has bought and fixed wrecked vehicles from auction and sold them for like 30 years. And so I've just grown up big fan of cars and around cars forever. And I've bought and fixed and sold vehicles from auction, different seasons of life over the time. And I'll still, just from a personal standpoint, fiddle around with it now. But I think a lot of that probably gave me some insight into maybe ways on how to do this and stuff like that. But I think about it, and I literally think half the reason I've had any success as far as developing cool stuff is just because I was just dumb enough not to quit. And I think somebody smarter than me would have gotten to what I'm doing now a lot faster. But for the last 8 years, man, everywhere I go, like my brain is just always thinking of like, oh man, what could we do? What about this? What about this? I have a document of just mountains of various. I'm like, oh, that'd be cool. And in the last couple of years, I've had some tech developments that have allowed me to try new things. So yeah, but my background is definitely much more of a Jawa trash engineer than anything else.
Well, the Jawas actually see the trash and they see the potential of the trash.
Yeah, that's it, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So with Romanus Records, you'll do a release that's like 100 splatter, 100 blob or whatever. And then 10 or 25 of these super unique liquid filled or tchotchke style.
Yeah. So I've had it's weird. The label's now been running for about 8 years, and for about 6 of it, maybe I've gotten a pretty standard kind of like release, I don't know, schedule idea of what I'm wanting to do. And yeah, a normal like first pressing of something will be like 150 splatter, 50 tricolor, 50 handmade custom of whatever it is I make. And then we have these bundles. And I typically work on my label side with bands that tour a lot, because those are just my kind of people. And between touring and that, we typically blow through the first press really quick. And I have bands like Volk and Joshua Powell, Manus Brothers, my dumb band, stuff like that, where we've, working with really indie bands that like are, selling over 1,000 units of a record with no major distro or anything like that. Just like, pounding the pavement. And the joke is, it's like anytime we sell over 1,000 of just, one thing, it's like certified cubic zirconium. And, it's like, but moving 1,000 records of anything is a pretty big accomplishment.
Oh,
and
cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know.
So with the records, now there's the splatter and the tricolor. I'm assuming the liquid filled and those special ones, those are made by hand. Those are probably
they're all
in your garage. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all one at a time, made by hand. And on the manufacturing side, that's like basically all I'm doing. Like, is that I'm not even offering full service to pretty much anybody. I'm just making custom units for everybody by hand, one at a time. And it's a lot of work.
Do you have a record press in your house? Do you have, how do you make those?
I don't have a boiler in my backyard. Okay. I'd love to, if anyone's listening. But yeah, so I do a combination of things that I make by hand, and then I work with plants. And then on the manufacturing side, people are providing me things that I'm modifying without getting too much in the weeds. And yeah, there's been pretty loose preliminary talks a couple times about making a record plant around Romanus, around my name, I guess, which is funny to me. It'd be Romanus Pressing or whatever. And I don't know. We'll see. I'm thankful. I'd like to think I have a healthy mindset about what success looks like and what my goals are, but that would be longer term. Maybe in 5 years. That's my hope, would be to transition to running a record plant and look at, there's no denying some of the most influential, what I think makes the coolest labels, the coolest vinyl centric things out there a lot of times are these labels that are taking as much in-house as possible. So, I mean, you've got the obvious, the Third Man. They've built this whole infrastructure, this whole world. And, you know, the fact that they've got their own pressing plant now, and they've got, you know, their own ability to record. They've built, I think it's so important towards mythos and brand making and ideology. And you see, I believe Mondo recently got their own presses, and like Metallica like bought out some presses, and just and they've actually owned some presses for a while anyways. But I think all of that builds like a real brand and like a brand identity, and that's my hopeful next step at some point, is to make that leap. But in the meantime, man, I'll run as lean as possible, as long as possible.
So your record, I guess, packages, it'll have the handmade stuff, which you make in the garage, or you have full control of those. And the manufacturing of those, even though they take time, at least you control those. When you have things like splatters and tricolors that you have to kind of farm out to another press, how do you kind of sync those up? Because the last couple of years, the supply chain's been all screwed up. How do you time those together?
Poorly. No. So it's twofold. On my label side, other than maybe one release a year, maybe, I don't operate on the big pre-order model that a lot of the world operates on right now. It's not worth the stress to me. It's just not worth it. And I'm pretty upfront with bands. Like, pressing times are starting to come down considerably right now, which is great. But definitely the last couple of years, I mean, I had some records took 13 months, to get in hand. So I'm just as honest as possible with people. I'm like, hey, like, this is where it's at. Let's target your stuff for around this time if we can. And we just, do what we can. But that just makes for a lot less stress. So it's like, all right, I have everything for a release on my label. I have everything I need. I have my regular splatters and tricolors. I have the stuff I need to modify to make the handmade stuff. It's all here.
Right.
And then on my manufacturing side, to keep my production chain smooth, I just make them send me everything. So I'm just like, hey, when you're ready, you send it on over. And that makes my production logjam over there a lot smoother, as smooth as it can be. Right. So I built like a studio onto my home in the last couple years, which has been a godsend for sure. Gave me a lot of extra space. And I think about how much of a, difference, just, I don't know where things are going. And I don't know. Sometimes I do wonder how labels the last couple of years were able to survive the boom when pressing times are that long, and it hurts independent artists the most.
Oh, yeah. You get back to the end of the line, which is why I asked, because, if you're doing 100 splatters or, 200 tricolors, or, those are pretty limited numbers in the, and so, you can get bumped pretty easy.
We do the 300 to 500 size run for first press on the label for most everything. Is kind of where we're at. And I work primarily, at least for my label, I work with a plant in Kentucky called Palomino Pressing. Travis is a great dude. Travis and Dash down there. It's like a really small team. And Travis is a car guy like me, so we just get along, and it's close to me. I can drive there and pick stuff up. So even when things got really intense, back it up there, like, the relationship's so good. He's such a good dude. Like, I'm happy to wait, like, and partner and just be along for the ride, because they are willing to do so much, individual stuff for me. And I've worked with plenty of other plants over the years, and they've been great. And there's ways to get 200 or 300 records pressed super quick right now, like in 10 weeks at certain places. They're not going to be as intense visually, but you can have stuff to tour with. And but yeah, man, you just, I don't know. There's not a whole lot you can do, I guess. You just have to say please and thank you. So,
so when, I say King Gizzard, they release some of their albums, the bootleg series. Yeah. And for people who aren't familiar with it, I think this is how it works. Every so often, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard will just release a series of tapes or live concerts or even rare recordings and just make them publicly available under no copyright. And it
Mm-hmm.
allows, and they actively encourage people to take those recordings, they're high resolution, wave files or whatever, and even some artwork, and just encourage people to print up and distribute and just to kind of have fun with these. So I think that's how it kind of works. Is that?
Yeah. So,
right?
I mean, I could go on for hours about why I think it's one of the smartest moves in the record industry in the last, 50 years to do this, because it only works. This idea of a public domain kind of stuff, it only works if the band's big enough for people to care. And then the first one they did was in 2017, where they released 5 studio albums that year, and then they put Polygon Wonderland out as a public domain, and it was just like, what is happening? What? And that was kind of like a test. And then I want to say it was like, must have been like Christmas Eve or something of 2020, I think that sounds right. They released like Teenage Gizzard and then like 4 or 5 like live recordings. And what they're doing, it's really smart, is it's mostly live stuff. It's stuff that they wouldn't press, and they are allowing other labels, anyone to just come up with creative ways to release this music in the world, make some money, and then they just say, hey, send us whatever amount you think is fair. Just send us some. Right. And so then they have their own web store called the Gizverse, and then they sell everything that's sent to them. And it's just free PR. It's such there's such a community building. I think I tell people a lot, not necessarily musically, but I think they're like the new Grateful Dead. Like, as far as the way there's such a community around the Dead for years, and there's like this traveling, lifestyle thing. And I think that's really happening for King Gizzard in a lot of ways. And so right now they're in the States, and there's all these meetups, these like, huge art meetups where there's all this art being made about the band and like merch and all this cool stuff. And it's just all built around the band, and people are following around and have these huge meetups. And that so much of that happened already a little bit, but the moment they made the bootlegger series, it just took it to a whole nother level. And selfishly, like, not selfishly, I just thankfully, they had the Polygon Wonderland release, like, had a huge impact on me from a growth standpoint. And then also, like, my youngest son at the time, it paid for his surgery. He had surgery that he had to have. And I didn't want to take on a bunch of medical debt or whatever to pay for it. And so I think it was like 200 liquid filled, which was such a freaking undertaking at the time. It's still a ginormous one now, but especially then. But it paid for my son's surgery, and at the same time, it gave me so much good exposure. And if you're listening now to King Gizzard, thank you. Like, they're for real. They're changing people's lives by just encouraging community, and I think a lot of other bands could do something similar just by embracing their community around their band and engaging in new ways. So
yeah, well, they are absolute innovators, and again, not just musically. They're Australian, so we actually get a little bit extra King Gizzard than the rest of the world, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, totally.
Occasionally that happens. Generally, it's other bands and countries, and we have to wait for them to find the time to make it to Australia, and we're lucky to have King Gizzard here quite a bit of the year.
Definitely, and they're doing a lot of like residencies now. Anytime they're in States, it's just these residencies. They're in Tennessee next week for like 4 days, and then Chicago for 4 days. And it's smart, man, and that's how you build that community. If you have to be big enough for it to obviously happen and warrant it, but like, yeah.
They're trying new things. They'll
try anything. They'll try anything. So yeah.
So the releases that I have from Romanus, a couple of them, King Gizzard live in London, and hang on, gingerly pulling this out of the sleeve now. This isn't the. Oh yes, it is. This is the hologram version.
Yeah, the holographic stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when you go to a pressing plant, you call up Travis over at Palomino Pressing, and you say, okay, I want to knock out, 200 or 500 of these King Gizzards or more, but it's got this unique attribute. Are they tooled to be able to? I mean, like how does that conversation go?
Yeah. So, man, again, it's just I'm constantly in the weeds of this world and like, all right, who can do cool things? And it's not just me. There's so many other people that are doing awesome creative stuff that some people know about, but clearly not the everyday vinyl collector. But when they see it, they're like, this is amazing. So Richard Houghton actually cut the lacquer for that. He's one of the only handful of people on earth that can cut the lacquers to have those effects. And it is very expensive to get that set up. But it's well worth it because his time matters. It's a real art form to that. And it's like a math problem. A lot of it's like this math problem for this to happen and to work out. And so, I mean, that's how that works. And then a lot of Romanus stuff, we actually use our lacquers get cut through. I'm just spilling the beans here. NRP, Nashville Record Pressing. And I think we've been working with them for the last probably 4 years on everything we put out. And the quality, I could tell the cut quality, everything sounds a little more high fidelity that comes from them. And
okay,
couldn't suggest them enough. So the lacquers are then getting sent. NRP cuts, stampers get made, and then they get sent to Travis at Palomino most of the time. And I couldn't say enough good things about what NRP is doing. So
the lacquer has to be created for the music, and then is it like a laser that has to go over the lacquer before it goes to the final stage?
I don't think it's a laser. I'm not even totally positive for that holographic effect. I think he's hand cutting the stuff. Like, it's not, as best as I understand. So
there's got to be a laser involved somehow. There's got to be some. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Even someone as deep in the weeds as me doesn't understand all of it. And that's something that I'm like happy about. Like, I love not knowing everything in the same way I love everyone not knowing every way I do everything. And so when I get to work with somebody like Richard, like, I really value what he's doing, and I'm happy to pay that premium because it's a premium product, and it's Richard's the man. Richard's the man.
Now, I love these beautiful records, and I think I'm willing to take a reduction of potential sound quality for a beautiful record. Quite often, I'll have a couple presses, maybe a really nice audio sounding one, and then a beautiful one. Does the conversation come up that much about the balance of, well, if you do this, you may introduce more noise or, less headroom, that sort of thing?
So it hasn't for me, in the sense that, like, I'm aware of it. I haven't really had much of anything come back to me from Palomino that I'm ever like, yikes, like, this is rough, or anything like that. And I mean, I'm aware of the, how records are made and what potentially sounds best or worse. But I also, and I could be just totally ignorant, but I feel like the quality control now, I feel like it's pretty high at most of these plants across the world. Like, I feel like it's pretty high. And I mean, you go look at just a standard black record, from 30, 40 years ago compared to just whatever you're getting out now from just insert the most random plant. Like, I mean, you'd go pick up some, like, Frank Sinatra record, and you're like, man, I doubt this is 100 grams. Like, this is thin.
Oh yeah.
And like, and it's black, and like, so you could tell me like, yeah, well, it's black, so therefore it sounds better. I'm like, well, these splatters I'm getting have got some weight to it, and it's a heft, and it feels like it's a more solidly made thing. It's less likely to ever have any bowling effect from heat because it's not so thin. So I don't know. It's never really been a problem for me. And the handmade stuff I do too. Like, I clean and test every one of those stupid things. And it's another part of the sweet, sweet toil what I'm doing, because there's a thought out there that, like, oh man, these handmade things, they all sound like dog water or whatever. Right. And a lot of times, in my experience, I mean, you're getting records from the plant now that are, I think these plants are stretched so thin that I'm just noticing a lot more dust from the factory on these things. And that can affect, obviously, the way something sounds. And so when I'm making these handmade things, I'm like, well, I'm cleaning them. Like, I'm giving these things more care than they might have anyways. And so they may sound better than they did from the factory. But yeah, it's
But going into a cycle, like when you're having a conversation with the record client, do you say,
I don't do glow in the dark. I won't do glow in the dark.
Is that pretty much unanimously agreed that glow in the dark records sound the worst?
I think so. I'm not even opposed to ever doing one, but there's ways that I make handmade stuff that I can do glow in the dark effects, and it doesn't affect the sound quality at all. And so I'm kind of just like, why would I do it differently? There's like a glow in the dark blue that's out there right now that isn't the floor, like the sound on it isn't nearly as bad as the green, from my experience, but I haven't had enough stones to put an order in yet and just be like, all right, let's see how this goes for a large scale thing. As much as I'd like to. So yeah, it's definitely in the conversation, but I haven't had anything that I've ever heard that I'm like, woof, that at least that I've released that I'm like, yikes.
Right.
But I'm like you, I've gotten some crazy pressings that for sure that I'm like, every once in a while I'll look at it and I'm like, you can just see indentations. I think a lot of the noise is more from like, it just didn't get a good pull from the puck or something. Like it just didn't come out very clean. And that's where you're getting kind of the surface noise. So,
all right. So I know there are trade secrets. So obviously we want to see Romanus in business for many years to come and always surprising us. We love the surprises. What can you tell us about your technique of hand making these records? The liquid filled, the stuff inside, the bullet encasings, the scorpions. How does one of those come together?
Yeah. So what happens is over time, I've built kind of like different base level processes for how to make things. So like if I'm making a sand filled record, I'm making it a certain way. And it's essentially got 4 types of seals in one of those. So they're like super, super strong. They're bricks. Liquids are made differently. Things like the Scorpion records took some like tech development. There's some like actual like legit engineering into that, into making something like that work. Because obviously Scorpions are chonky. And the guitar pedal record was for sure the biggest for me, kind of engineering related.
You had to have circuit boards and shit in there, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So and I worked with ADD Pedals, really cool boutique guitar pedal company here in Indiana. And yeah, there's stuff that he knows how to do that I don't, and it just varies by record to record. And you learn over time, this works, this doesn't work. This product works well. This sealant is great. This one sucks. What a painful lesson to learn. Yeah. And it's just, you're just kind of building on what you know over time, over 8 years, which melts my mind. What in the world am I doing with my life that I've been jacking around making wacky records for like this very specific niche, mostly for 8 years. But yeah, that's as much as I can tell like the gist of it.
Yeah. And again, you've got your methods of doing it. I certainly wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable.
No. Yeah. And these are pressed records. These are all pressed records. These are not lathe cut records. You could use lathe records, but I think we want everything to sound as good as possible. And you just can't beat, all the processes that go into pressing a record from start to finish. Like
is it the same quality as like a normal pressed record?
Yeah, okay. Totally. So, and the hope is, like I said, we clean and test every one of them. So if we do our job right, it might even come out better than it did coming from the plant, like hot off the thing, because we're cleaning everything. We're going over it. Whereas maybe your regular black or splatter record that we got it in a jacket, we put it in the mail. It might have some, like there might be a lot of dust on it. We might not know. If it's like a clear based record, it's super easy to like have no idea. They're like, oh dang, that thing was dusty. So we're trying to do our absolute best with that kind of stuff and just give people what we would want to get.
How about the care for these records? Like I've got a couple liquid filled ones, and I don't know whether I if you have a wine collection. I don't have a wine collection.
Yeah.
But if you have a wine collection, you're supposed to go in and you're supposed to turn them every month or something like that, especially.
Yeah.
Do you need to do something similar to the vinyl records to keep them at their optimal?
We'll be back after these messages.
There's no doubt about it. Record collecting has become a serious hobby and even an investment for many around the world. So record collectors have to ask themselves how best to protect their prized records and confidently buy and sell with others. There is an option to consider: vintage media grading at vmgvinyl.com. vmgvinyl.com will professionally grade your record and encase it in protective plastic, so your record will retain its value for decades to come. This is the same approach that comic book and sports card collectors have done for years. Now, I know many record collectors will be horrified with the thought of having their records graded and encased in plastic. And for the majority of records, this isn't necessary. But if you have top dollar records that you need to protect, maybe a super rare album that's languishing on the shelf, a one-off misprint, or a special LP that you want to protect, look up vmgvinyl.com, Vintage Media Grading, and see if this service is right for you. That's Vintage Media Grading, vmgvinyl.com.
Hey everyone, I'm here to talk to you about Seams Easy record sleeve repair strips. Ever find a record in a used bin where the vinyl is gorgeous, but the sleeve has this ugly split and is even falling completely apart? Well, that's okay. Grab it anyway, because with Seams Easy record sleeve repair strips, you can fix that right up. Seams Easy record repair strips repair seam splits from the inside, so it doesn't affect the appearance of a record sleeve, but it does make it functional again. With Seams Easy, records can now slide in and out like new. Turn a $5 record into a $25 functioning collectible. Just ask your local record shop for Seams Easy strips, and if they're not in stock, go to seamseasy.com. That's Seams Easy with 2 Z's. Seams Easy record sleeve repair strips. Seems easy because it is. Oh, and hey, record nerds, don't forget to clean your records with the very best and safest record cleaner, the Groove Washer. Make your records look and sound their very best and store them with confidence using the new Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves. You gotta try this out. It makes a huge difference to the quality of your vinyl experience. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record store and accept no substitutes. Or head over to groovewasher.com and use discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
All hail the Groove Washer.
That's groovewasher.com, discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
Now we return to the program, already in progress.
No limits.
How about the care for these records? Like, I've got a couple liquid filled ones, and I don't know whether I if you have a wine collection. I don't have a wine collection.
Yeah.
But if you have a wine collection, you're supposed to go in and you're supposed to turn them every month or something like that, especially.
Yeah.
Do you need to do something similar to the vinyl records to keep them at their optimal?
These are some emerging great questions, because half of the weird world is like, there are things that I've learned over time that are good, and there's other stuff like nobody knows. Like, we just don't know. So like with liquid filled, for example, we use a type of liquid that we feel pretty confident shouldn't evaporate, or if it does, it's like very minimal. And we've switched to this in the last like 3 years. And it's not oil, for the record. It's not oil. But if fights evaporation, and it's designed basically not to evaporate. My thought has been with liquids, and again, of everything I make, liquids is the only one I'm still like a little like, hey, there's no lifetime warranty here, because nobody knows. Like we the first,
you can work it out with sand, and we know what sand's going to look like.
Yeah, anything that's dry, I'm like, these are bricks. Like, you just store them up and down, they're good to go. You don't have anything to worry about.
Okay.
It's other than like with the rest of vinyl, just don't have it in extreme temperature, direct sunlight, that kind of stuff. Liquids, what I've told people is, I do think it's worth giving them a little jostle every once in a while. But beyond that, I mean, there's only 3 or 4 other people that I know that even make liquids around. There's Plastic Cat, or the Barn Cat, Matt Ort out of Kentucky. Love him. He's one of my like closest wacky vinyl co-conspirators. Like, we'll have very honest conversations. He's probably my most trusted dude to talk to, just really frank about this stuff. He's such a great guy. There was Curtis Godino, who I think is like the true like godfather of liquid vinyl. He's done some cool stuff over the years. He doesn't do as much, but his liquid light show stuff he does too is amazing. So he just does a lot of cool art. And then there's different ways that some of these are made. There's a guy in Germany that's gotten into it. Yeah, with liquid, I would say give them maybe a little jostle, and then depending on how they're made, they all have what I call their final seals at different places. And where I know where mine are, I put a mark, and I'm like, hey, when you're done, just stand it up so that's at the top. And
got it. Just in case there's a compromise in the seal.
Yeah, if there was going to be a compromised place, it would be right there. And knock on wood, the way I'm making these things now, my V1, so to speak, I've got a date written on it, and I'm observing it all the time. It's 5 years old, and it's doing great. So I'm like, all right. 5 years is pretty good,
Yeah.
So there's with liquids especially, there's an inherited level of risk with it. There just is, because nobody knows. Like, we just don't have the scope of time to know all the way what's going to happen. So we're all educated along for the ride. But everything else I make, I'm like, oh, these are bricks. They're good to go. I'm not worried about it at all. But people love them liquids, man. They're just like, yeah, let's do it. Let's I don't know, blow my mind.
We had Jay Millar on. I don't know if you know Jay. He's with Sundays. Okay, he was talking about doing what he couched as one of the first liquid filled records, which was blood of various artists, and he had to pull in. Yeah,
I have a pair of those. So
okay,
so they're, as best as I know, as someone who's living in this space, as like a documentarian of how did the filled vinyl come to be. Disney, I want to say in the late 70s, tried to make the first ever liquid filled vinyl, and I think it was for
Dwarf Blood. Is that for seven?
It was like,
no, I'm kidding.
Or maybe it was like Space 2001. I think they were trying to make it for that, and they didn't end up working. But there's like some images floating around. I think of like the mock-up of like a working-ish one, but it never got released. And I've always been like, I doubt one of those failed ones survived. I doubt it. But if there is, somebody has one that's empty and dried and broke, I want it so bad. And then, if memory serves, 2012, both Third Man Records and the Flaming Lips both put out liquids in the same year. They were made in conjunction with United Record Pressing. I wish I knew who exactly was the guy who came up with it, but yeah, the Flaming Lips had Real Blood, Real Human Blood as a double LP, and the money, there was like 10 sets made, and the money was donated to I think
Yoko Ono's charity. I think
it was an animal shelter. I think half was maybe to Yoko's thing, I can't remember, and then half was like to an Oklahoma like animal shelter or something. I know it had to do it with animals. So it was like a really great cause. There's 10 sets. They're $2,500. They were sealed. And it was Real Human Blood, which is pretty wild. But and I know it's real because they all coagulated. They all dried up. But I have a set that was a band, like proof set. So it wasn't sealed. And I have a set of those. And then I even on my wall, I can't show you actually. There's secret stuff over there. I have Third Man, their Jack White's liquid filled that he did for 16 Saltines. I've got two of those. One has got liquid in it and one's dried up, which is fine. And I have even the test press of it. So even though that some of these things maybe didn't totally work all the way, like they're breaking so much new ground. And I'm like, I think it's the coolest thing. I'm like, man, these people are taking the real risk. They're getting out there and trying this new thing and going a new direction. And like, it's like a piece of like history. It's like, somebody making the first, motorcycle. And you're like, yeah, well, this motorcycle is not that great now, but it's the first motorcycle. Imagine the creativity to come up with this. So
yeah, it's like Sputnik.
Yeah, for real. That's like, so I think that's how kind of a lot of this got going. And then I came along in my brain space around 16 or 17, something like that. And I thought there was this whole other art space that wasn't being explored. I thought there was these 2 liquids made and everyone thought that was really cool. And then Curtis Godino made one for Worthless, his band. And he does oil wheels and stuff. So he had kind of the right mindset for that. But I just thought there's this whole other weird world I don't think a lot of people are exploring. And I just went down that road. So
you've had so many amazing records come out. What is 1 or 2 unmitigated disasters?
Yeah. Fun. What a fun question. I did these blood-filled records for Mortal Kombat 1 and 2. Probably, I don't know, like 3 years ago, something like that. I think it was before pandemic. I'm pretty positive it was before the pandemic, or maybe it was during. I just remember eating Chipotle somewhere when it came out, and there were people there. So everything is based. Were people around? I was like, oh man, where was I? I just remember that. And,
nothing good starts with Chipotle.
Yeah. But there was just a way that was like, oh, if I do this a little different, this will look even cleaner and crisper. And it turns out, if you want to know something, vinyl is slightly porous. Okay. It is slightly porous. And I had liquid that came basically through one side to the other. And because it's in a certain place, liquid was reaching a certain place. And that melted my mind. I was like, no way. And so I had to take apart, I don't know, like 40 or 50 of those things. And I still got like 20 shells here that they're pretty much just never going to get redone. But I did enough to fulfill the order. And that was painful. Like rebuilding a liquid, like a true rebuild. It is awful. It sucks. And what was something else that was painful? Pain. I mean, there's been times I've switched a sealant that I'm using, and then because you're like, oh, I ran out of what I know is good. This should be fine. And then you use it and you're like, it's not. This sucks. I have to take these apart. Taking apart a sand-filled record, you know what, you can only imagine what sand will do to a record. So like trying to get the sand out without it touching the good side of the record and all that, like that's a real chore. And then I even had some liquids in the really early day that I subcontracted out to somebody. And I'm not going to dunk on them. They were just trying, they're learning, but it was really low numbers I was doing, thankfully. And it was just on my label. But some of them, I had some leaks and some evap, and it's just part of it, man. At that time, it's just so emerging. But from that, I learned, all right, I need to place all of this on myself. That way I never feel like I've got anyone to blame, and I don't want anyone else to feel bad. I don't want to tell somebody, hey, the stuff you did for me sucks. Like, I want to be like, hey, I asked you to do it. No one made me ask you. I want to have onus and ownership over it, and then be considerate to artists and innovators that are trying to do something new and something cool, and knowing that like there's a risk to be new. There's a risk to trying to innovate, and just trying to be understanding about that. So
now you've clearly gone beyond your label and the bands you're dealing with, you're in or friends of or meeting, to where you're starting to get phone calls from large artists, well-known names.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that into the business?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. I mean, especially in the last 2 years, I've had some very flattering phone calls and things that are happening all the time, like almost every day right now. Like I'm living in a good little chunk of time right now, which I'm very thankful for. But it's all on the backbone of like, I still have to do all this work to make it matter.
What I just was recently, the holy shit phone call that came in?
I mean, I don't know how much. It's so weird on like what I'm allowed to share. I mean, so I just did records for Fall Out Boy. Recently we did these tear infused records, and I mean that came together so fast. Like, we're talking random guy emails me. I'm getting like cold call essentially emails every day, from large artists or people who represent large artists or labels or plants, blah blah blah. And they were just like, hey, I've got this artist, I've got this idea, yada yada yada. And I was like, hey, can you just do a phone call and we get to talking? And he's a really good dude. And I'm like, yeah, man. dude, I think I can make this happen. I was like, but you got to tell me who it is. Like, this is really, it's important. If I'm going to try to rush something, there has to be a legitimate reason, you know? And he's like, oh, it's Fall Out Boy. And then he got some of their real tears, and we infused their real tears into these liquid filled records, and just really leaning into the most emo, you know, kind of thing you could. And the execution was awesome. Like, I love the idea and the design packaging. And there's still 2% of me that's like, oh, did they really give me their tears? You know, you don't know. And I'm watching one of them, they all got their tears collected and stuff, but I watched one of them get their tears collected. And then at the end of the video, I saw like a package, and it was this like gold package. And I was like, oh, that's at my house. Like, that's real. These really came here.
Full provenance there.
And they didn't even send me tracking whenever they got here. I had no idea what it was. I almost threw it away. I didn't think there was anything in here. And I was like, oh, there's a vial. Oh, this must be the tears. I almost threw it away. So there's that. I mean, you know, obviously I respect the crap out of Third Man Records. I think they have done so much for making vinyl cool and respecting the history of like going beyond and making vinyl so much more than just the listening experience, as much as like this tactile art. Just like, I think the right word would be like, they are so focused on music immersion and finding new ways to immerse you into the thought process of like getting into this music, whether that's cool vinyl, whether that's amazing shows and crazy visuals, whatever. Like, so, you know, some of the people there that, you know, run the thing, own the thing, do the thing, you know, I've had some really, it's just cool just to have some, I don't know, mutual respect from those people, which means a lot to me. And things like, I'm learning all the time. I mean, I did stuff for Slime Language, which is like a rap, like what would be the right word? Not a group. This has tons of rappers in it.
Collective.
It's like a collab kind of thing. I always think about Rough Riders. It's like modern day Rough Riders in the sense, which ages me a little bit. But like Young Thug's on there. I'm like, I made a record that has Drake and Meek Mill on it, and I'm like, what's happening to my life? You know, it's crazy, like some of the stuff, like, and it's getting wilder every single day. Like to the point that like a couple of years ago did something for a band called I Don't Know How They Found Me, and I didn't even know who they were. Okay, I'm pretty plugged into music, didn't know who they were. And then the next day, like a couple days later, I'm working on these records and I see, hey, we're number one on alternative Billboard, and then like, hey, we're on Ellen DeGeneres, and hey, we're on this late night show. And I'm like, oh, I'm making these records. Oh, that's cool. And you just, and there's way more insanity coming later this year. Like it blows my mind. And I have these pressing plants that are across the globe that, I'm not doing anything. Like I'm not giving them a cut of money or nothing. And I've been nice enough. I've done some projects, and they're basically being like a sales department for me without me even knowing it. Cause they're like, anytime a big band wants to do something, like they're just referring to me. They're like, oh yeah, this guy in Indiana, man, he's the guy. And like,
there's Romanus, and people go to romanusrecords.com. There's a big gallery of the records that you've done, and all of them are sold out. I mean, they go very quick. Then you look on Discogs, Romanus Records, and you can kind of get an idea of some of the history of the label. But it sounds like there's a lot of records that you deal with that don't have Romanus name on it at all. In fact, you may be it may be a condition of doing business that you don't claim that you've done those records. Is that
so? That's something to me that I've been really upfront with anyone. Is it's very important to give people credit for the work that they do. And I think rising water, raises all ships. And so I'm very like, hey, if I, like on my manufacturing side, anything I do on the manufacturing side, I have to be able to say that I did it. Like you can't try to hide me under some weird NDA and be like, hey, you're not allowed to discuss all the hard work you did. And I'm like, that's so dumb. Why wouldn't you want people to know? You're not going to be able to hide me as like your secret guy, or whatever. And yeah, most of the groups or bands are been pretty cool and like will tag me and stuff. Some don't, and that's okay. That's their prerogative. They're paying for a service. They can do whatever they want. But in general, I think I'd like to think that my name has got some like brand recognition, but also trust in the industry. So like, and I explain that to some of these people because this is all still so new to so many people. I'm like, hey, if you're tagging me or we do collab posts or something, like it will typically bring more buyer trust about this custom thing than it would be the opposite of just like, I don't know who's making these, what are they doing? But it is interesting that I think I've only had one or two people ever that like have said, hey, you can't like try to say you
that was a
say
deal breaker.
Yeah. Like I understand keeping NDAs in the moment. I've had to sign plenty where it's like, yeah, until it's released, obviously we can't tell anybody, and that's fine. That's cool. But my business doesn't grow. I don't get developed as a artist or creator or whatever if like I can't tell anybody about it. So,
Right.
but it's pervasive in the art culture in general. And I understand why people want to protect their source, but it's not always a real generous way to treat people. So
Chris, it seems like you're living a dream life around records, around music. You're being creative. You're a very, very proficient craftsperson. Getting there, it's a long road to getting where you're at, and you seem to be in a really good situation on a really good path. Any recommendations or thoughts, or for people that are out there looking to grow a career, not even just in music or vinyl manufacturing, but just how to be able to adjust their lives to get on maybe a similar path, the one that's right for them.
Yeah, I think I've mentored a lot of people. I used to work in nonprofit stuff with kids, a lot of like middle school, high school age kids, and just it's still something I'm really passionate about, and more now within the realms of like entrepreneurship and what that looks like and creativity. And I think the thing that you can't die by analysis, you can't have death by analysis. Like you just have to start, like with bands, like young bands, the idea is like, just go suck now, like go start a band now. Your first band's probably not going to be, your only band. Your first boyfriend or girlfriend isn't probably who you're going to marry. And it's just all these things, in life. Whatever, and just start something today and just make time for whatever you're into. If you want to go down that road, and a lot of times just that slow roll of progress, man, you'll learn things along the way, and you'll pivot, man. If I wouldn't have pivoted, my whole story of my whatever I'm doing now is because I pivoted. I started at 27, I left my nonprofit job, and I left it because I'd started this new band that I'm still in now, Brother, with the idea like I need to be able to tour more. I need to have time to tour. I think this band could be good enough to just do the thing, tour, but I won't be able to do that if I'm working this job. And I mean, I'm married at the time and whatever, but my wife's like, all right, as long as you're bringing in what you need to bring in, whatever. And so I was like, cool. So I started buying and fixing wrecked vehicles with my dad, because I knew that'd give me flexibility. And then I would do Jimmy John's bicycle delivery, delivering sandwiches. I was like working at a bicycle shop, just odd jobs, just crud. It's real humbling to have a college degree and go deliver sandwiches on a bicycle. It's good. And you're like, all right, am I really committed to this music thing? But because I started touring, we started having a little bit of success out of that. Eventually the label was birthed, and I would have never thought out of that, like, well, if I would have, I don't really know what to do, or, I don't have all this distro. What do I start? Just start doing something. And because I did that, I was able to pivot into doing the manufacturing side. And now I'm doing stuff for Fall Out Boy. I'm doing records with Drake on it. I just did stuff for Comeback Kid, like artists that I couldn't even imagine, or just even people I respect, like that, just they know I exist, and they're like, they respect what I'm doing and are interested and happy to take a call. And that all happens just because you start. And so whatever you're thinking of doing out there, listener, just start something, just start doing something. And if you start to have a little success, the goal, everyone's all like, I wish that'd be my real job someday. It can be. It can happen. There's no perfect time. A lot of times it just happens, but it's all about changing the clock. It's about moving the clock from more time creating, more time building as a profession. And eventually, man, that clock, eventually you're going to fill up the whole thing with like what you want to do. And I really believe it. And I know there's a lot of systemic and different issues that can make it hard. But, you know, be encouraged and do just go after it. Like, even if your situation's brutal, to be doing something creative, it'll just make your story all the better to inspire others. So yeah, that's my 5-minute TED talk. Believe in yourself, you know, kind of thing. So, if I can be doing what I'm doing, whoever out there can be doing something way cooler, way faster, and way more successful than me. No doubt. So
that's a great summary, Chris. Because I've always thought, and this is what I express. I've got two teenage.
I mean, look
boys.
at you. You're on like episode 400 of this thing. You've interviewed like your Chris Shiflett. You interviewed like guys from ZZ Top. You've talked to John Dwyer. Like, you've interviewed some like monsters. Like, you're doing the thing. Like, that's incredible. Like, I'm blown away by like what you do. And like, it all happened probably because you're like, you know, I'm just going to start this podcast. I don't know where it's going. And you just keep
100%.
You just kept going instead of, I'm sure there's lulls where you're like, I don't know if I really want to keep this going. Like, I don't know. I guess I won't stop. And like, it's that persistence. Gosh, it sounds like a corporate meeting. Persistence over resistance, you know, or whatever.
You know, it is.
But
that
for real.
You're exactly right. And thank you for that. Look, I set the pace for myself early on. It's like, it has to be every week. It has to be every week. There's no bullshitting around, you know. And I want to be as regular as a newspaper for people. That's why I always try to release it within the same hour every week. You know, to me, it has to be consistent, because otherwise you start to make excuses. Oh, it's been a long week. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sick. I can't do it. Oh, I just don't feel right. Oh, this happened. You know, you could start, those excuses can really keep you from it. But like I've always tried to tell my kids that they don't know, like, you know, what is it I'm good at? What do I want to do? I don't know what, you know, even where to start. And it's like, find the thing that you will lose sleep over, something that will have you, you know, you'll want to wake up at 4 a.m. and get a couple hours in before school, or you'll want to stay up late to do. Find whatever that is, and then just start building on it and get good at it. Because if that's what kind of inspires you, that's what gives you, you know, your passion, then you will get good at it, and somehow money will happen. And to me, record collecting and technology and digital audio editing, I spend so much time, probably in the same way you do, with the quality of your records and cleaning and making sure the product goes out as perfect as possible. Driving to Boston instead of shipping, you think of those details. I do the same thing when I do my digital audio editing. I come from, you know, a studio music background. You can probably see some of the stuff in the background.
Of course, yeah.
Some of the projects I've worked on. I just ache to make sure each episode sounds fucking great. That's because I always think if people are listening, they're record collectors, they're used to good quality audio. I need to deliver them something that's good quality audio. They will know right away if it sucks. And so, you know, I spend, you know, at least a couple hours each week just tweaking the audio signals to make sure that they sound pleasant to people. Yeah,
you're like, Chris's laugh was really far away in that time, man. We got to bump that up, you know. We got
like, yeah, exactly. Or someone's or you know, I'm not you know, above asking an artist, hey, can you stop drumming on the table, please? You know, or whatever, you know. I actually, there's an interview I did with Don Was. You know, producer, he worked with the Rolling Stones. He's president of Blue Note Records. And
crazy.
he wears these beads around. And I was so proud that during the interview, the sound audio was so crisp. You could hear his beads kind of jingle as he kind of shifted back and forth. So yeah, and those are the sort of details that, you know, maybe people don't know about, but I think they appreciate. But yeah, look, it's a great philosophy, and I think you fail fast, get whatever you got to get out there, fail fast, pivot, and keep moving forward.
Yeah, don't get bogged down in the weeds of it, man. Just like believe in what you're doing, and also if you fail, man, just fail hard and just go on to the next thing. There's no shame in saying like, all right, man, I had fun with that for a minute, and it's time to do the next thing, and that's super healthy. I think that we can cultivate that environment a lot more. People be a lot more willing to try things instead of being like, no, I might suck or whatever. So
yeah, exactly. No, you will suck for a while. There's no doubt about it. If you're doing it, if you're being adventurous, you're trying new things, you're going to suck for a while. You don't just pick up the guitar and on day one know how to play like Eddie Van Halen. It takes decades to get anywhere near that. So anyway, thank you so much. Very inspiring, Chris. And Romanus Records, again, I'm so delighted. You're one of the Instagram accounts that I actually have an alert on. It's like, okay, whenever they post, I want to see what the fuck he's up to, because it's always really creative. It's always really unique. And I know there are other record folks who do this kind of creative craft records. I don't even know what to call it. Is there a genre? Is there something
I call them insertion records. That could be the wrong term. It just sounds good to me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
well,
the people I think of real quick in that world are just like Matt Ort, I think, who's like Plastic Cat. I think of you've got like Vinyl Manufacturer. He's in Germany. There's a guy who's doing some stuff called New Cosmos, who's like a newer kind of on the scene. And I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but there's even like insane lathe cut people, like people in a position to know. Mike Dixon, he's like the lathe cut father. And and then you got your press operators like Wax Mage and stuff like that. Like, yeah, there's some real innovators out there for sure.
I don't know if you know Salty Dog in Australia.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Good dude. I have a band on my label called Pat and the Pissers, and I was going to make a piss-filled record, and then he did those pee records, and I was like, I just can't do it now. Like the pee is already out. Like I can't. It just wouldn't be the same. So congrats to him for harnessing the pee.
Have you seen the private function ones that look like bags of cocaine?
Yeah.
Inside the
yeah.
They're just Again, everyone, if you're not familiar with Romanus Records, look them up. Instagram. You go to romanusrecords.com, see the work there. And follow them on social media, because I think that's the only way you really know when something is going to go live and ready for pre-order.
Yeah, so I've got my label, Romanus Records, and then stuff I do for other bands and labels, Romanus Custom Vinyl Manufacturing. And when I'm able, especially on the manufacturing side, a lot of people are interested. If I'm able to say like, hey, these are going on sale, I do. A lot of times I'm not, but there are projects where I'm allowed to say like, hey, on sale now. So yeah, if you're into this kind of thing, give us a follow.
And if you're an artist or work for an artist or label or PR and you want to get some custom records made, make sure to give a good 4 to 6 month heads up. But sounds like it's a really interesting creative idea factory at Romanus Records. And man, I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you, sir. Thanks so much for having me on, man. Seriously, I have so much respect for what you do, so I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Look, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Thanks, man.
Oh man, what a nice dude, man! And again, just like in the weeks in between when we had this conversation and when I'm publishing this episode, there's even more innovations that Romanus Records is putting out there on their Instagram page. So make sure to give them a follow. Oh yeah, and quick reminder, there is an extended version of this interview only available to show patrons at patreon.com/vinyl guide. Head up there now, help support the show, and enjoy all the extras. And that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share these episodes on your social media. Put them on Facebook, tweet them out on Twitter, snap a screen grab and put it on Instagram, put it on Threads, put it in Reddit forums, Facebook groups. Show the record nerds at your local record shop how to get a podcast on that smartphone of theirs. That is always appreciated. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.